Today, our 2021 assessment notices are in the mail. So as Matt said, I'm just going to go through a pretty brief presentation and then open the floor for any questions that you might have. This year, we assessed more than 413,000 total properties, of which about 383,000 were residential and almost 31,000 were non-residential and apartment buildings. So this year, the assessment cycle changed a bit, and that was because of COVID and the pandemic. Because we wanted to measure the pandemic's impacts on the real estate market, we took some extra time to ensure fairness and accuracy in our assessment values. Normally, we mail in the first days of January. This year, we're mailing today in February. When we assess your property, we use Alberta's market valuation date, which is July the 1st, and we look at the physical condition of the property as if it existed on December the 31st. So the total assessed value for all taxable properties is 175 billion. 117 billion of that is made up of residential property and 53 billion is non-residential. On to what we saw in the market. Overall, assessment values decreased. By tax class, the value of residential property fell by 2.7% from last year, while non-residential property fell by about 7.6%. However, within those overall tax classes, there was variation, particularly in non-residential. When the pandemic was declared in March last year, we weren't immediately sure what the effects would be on the real estate market. What we saw was that in Edmonton, there was a slowdown in the number of transactions that were taking place, as there was nationally. However, following some historically low interest rates and into the late spring and early summer, we did see a bounce back in real estate activity, which remained reasonably strong through the valuation date of July the 1st. Overall, the residential market saw a slight decrease, the exception being for larger multi-residential buildings, where higher vacancies, attributed in part to economic uncertainty, saw the value of those decrease. So in terms of typical values, the median detached home was assessed at 380,500, and the median condominium was 181,500. So this slide shows some of the neighborhoods that saw the biggest changes. Interestingly, 9 out of 10 of these neighborhoods were not in the top or bottom 5 last year. In general, we can say that residential assessments have been quite stable, with not a lot of variation between neighborhoods. Turning now to non-residential properties. This year, we did a second round of requests for information from non-residential property owners, which was the major reason for our timeline change. We were looking for information from property owners on how the pandemic and the resulting gathering restrictions were affecting their business. What we learned was that for many, the impact of the pandemic was still filtering through. Some individual owners were affected to quite a large extent. However, for many, rent collection and vacancies were still fairly consistent at the valuation date, July the 1st. This slide shows the impact across the non-residential class. The story here is the effect on of the pandemic on hotels and motels. This trend is replicated across the province. With no tourism, events, conferences, or weddings, this sector has lost a lot of business this year, and the values reflect that. Shopping malls have also been quite affected, as well as some downtown offices. On the other side, the values of certain industrial properties and retail distribution, warehouses, and delivery-centered industries stayed relatively strong. So, when you get your assessment notice, which are, again, in the mail today, what we're asking you to do as an Edmontonian property owner is to review the notice and its assessed value, and to check that the details of the property are correct. We ask that you compare your property to similar properties in your neighborhood using tools available through our website, and please do contact the city if you have any questions or concerns. How you would do that is if you have any questions, or if you want to find out more about your property and how assessments are made, there's a wealth of information at edmonton.ca/assessment and through the My Property portal. at myproperty.edmonton.ca. Through that My Property portal, you can also sign up for electronic notices, which means that your notices will be delivered electronically as soon as we release them. If you would like one-on-one support to understand your assessment better or to understand the assessment process, please call 311 and ask to be connected to an assessor. So Council did announce a 0% budget this year. Now that is the overall tax levy, but that does not mean that each property owner will see that 0% or no change in their taxes. It all depends on the value of your property relative to all the other properties in the same tax class. So if your assessed value went up more than similar properties, your increase will be higher. So you will probably see a tax increase. If the value of your property decreases more than the median, your tax bill will be lower. So what that 0% refers to is the size of the pie that Council is looking to distribute amongst the tax-paying public, like the tax base. And what the assessment does is figures out of that amount, which has not increased over the last year, how much you pay relative to everybody else's.